And strangely, we get to see the person that's in the clip in the flesh. Good morning, Benny Mac in the
Hey,
house.
Braz, how are you?
Is that really weird watching that?
That's what?
Is that really weird watching that?
Yeah, so weird. I haven't watched it since pretty much for a year now. Moved places, everything's changed. It's weird going back to that because you spend so much, I spent so much time in that house the same way we all did, drinking way too much wine and just feeling sorry for yourself, eh? And now we're back in.
And it can't be any more appropriate. I get emotional watching that clip. Has anyone told you that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, when
It's heavy. It's heavy.
Yeah, because it's quite nuanced and subtle, isn't it? Like it's about nothing, and it's about all of those little moments in between the big moments, which is where most of our life kind of lives anyway. So that's what I was trying to aim for. And the beauty of that clip, when I heard it first from Ains, I loved it. Like, it's one of my favorite songs. She's one of the best Australian singer-songwriters.
I'm getting tingles.
Yeah.
I'm getting full tingles listening to what she is.
She's incredible. And then her and her manager were like, oh, well, we might just do we can't do anything. So what if we just get like two animals, like having a lovey, cute, like interaction. And they wanted to go this like fun avenue. And I was like, oh, I reckon we could sort of completely flip it and see what we can do and, change the meaning of the lyrics by adding changing the video clip. And that sort of just came out of nowhere. Shot that over 2 or 3 nights. And then, the first time Ains saw it as well, she's like, oh my God, this changes the song, so.
I think we've all, I've heard Ray LaMontagne or, artists do covers of songs, and we were talking about it. I started off with a few covers really early today in the show, and you can stuff up a cover. It's not easily done, because especially a John Farnham track. Were you nervous about taking that slant on it, or do you get a light bulb moment and with your creativity go, yeah, I think I believe in this idea. I don't care whether no one else does. I'm super on. Let me work on this.
Well, it's more like you don't have a choice. You've got, if you're going to take the safe option, you're not doing anything new. You're not pushing it, and it's if you're gonna do something, particularly in the creative world, the standard that you've got to set is, am I going to be stoked to watch this? And even if it doesn't pull off, is just what I'm creating, what I'm producing, something that is new? And if not, why am I doing it? Somebody else can do that, what's the point if it's just going to be the same over and over again? And then I guess that's a bit of the trap that creatives have, is that you're always trying to find something new, and you never know when to be content and satisfied. I think I would have been super disappointed, and if we just went down a kind of classic path, we're talking about just recreating the cheesy old video clip, and it's kind of like, it's a bit gimmicky and it doesn't have soul to it. And that song has soul to it the way Ains sings it. So it's like, well, we've got to match that. Like, we've got to marry what she's done with it with visuals and take it to a whole new area. So, yeah.
As long as I've known you, you touched on it there. You do meaningful work, and you kind of hold that as the bar. As long as you're not going to do it if you're going to sell yourself out a bit. Has this always been you since a little kid? You've been like, did you notice through school you're like sticking up for the little guys, or is it something that did you change in your teens and not follow the boys that were going one way, and you're like, I'm out? Like, do you know where this came from? This intent to bring community stories to life?
Yeah, well, I was the little guy for most of my life. This weedy little nerdy kid who had a speech impediment when I was younger. People were like, where is your accent from? Why can't you talk properly? And weird shit like that. And then had big dorky glasses on, the shittest haircut, and just supreme low confidence as well.
Wow.
So, I remember in primary school just walking around by myself, but then somehow I'd make friends and I was oblivious to it, right? And then probably towards the end of high school, end of primary school, start of high school, I'd probably attribute it to becoming a bit more athletic, starting playing basketball and getting involved with those boys, and then also finding confidence in performing. So I used to do a lot of acting.
Wow.
And then having the experience of being that little person, and like I'm an empath for sure, like I feel things before I can really identify them or understand them. You could then start to see other people who were getting caught behind. And because I'd built a position where I'd grown confidence enough, but was still mingling with the cool crowd or whatever, it could be like, you could call it out easier because there's no option. Like, if you can feel somebody's pain, or if you can feel that somebody's in a power position, you just gotta just call them on it, right? Like, and then I guess that's where storytelling is so important to me. Is it's always about, it's never about telling the stories that are already told. It's about telling the stories which often, people don't know how important their stories are because they've never been presented in the way that media gets to present them. There's a lot of tricks. And as soon as you give it this wrapping, a story goes from, whatever, to this is moving and this is big. And everyone sort of has that along the way. They just don't have that perspective to look back on their own story. With those tools.
When did you first pick up a lens and realise that was the power of the lens and bringing that story? What was one of your first works that you realised, hey, I enjoyed that, and far out that worked?
Yeah, well, my first lens would have been when I was like 16. I was actually at when I went to Santa Teresa, so community north of Alice Springs, and I took a little SLR black and white film. Shot a roll of film there, had no idea what I was doing, didn't do photography or anything at school.
Wow.
Came back and I was like, this is pretty cool. Taught myself photography at lunchtime with one of the art teachers. And then sort of was shooting along the way, moved to Africa and was living in Africa when I was like 19, 20, had some more film there, was just sort of documenting it, but was never really, photography was never the thing. And then it sort of merged into, I got into stop-start animation and storytelling that way. And so I was like doing all these hand-drawn frames and then using a camera to do it. And then that turned into short films. And then eventually, I'm taking photographs the whole time. But it wouldn't have been until I was about 25 when I started seriously taking photos.
Does that mean spending a couple extra zeros in your bank account and getting some decent gear and making a jump and an investment into going, look, I mean, we talk about gear. Where does it end? What are you traveling with at the moment? And like,
yeah,
do you love the tech
these
side
days?
Of it?
Well, you've got to, but yeah, these days it's let's not look at that because that's where most of the cash goes.
No, that's great.
But for a young person, it's important to say, like, I would have been on below minimum wage until I was like 25, 26, and you make it work. Like, it doesn't matter. You can find ways to be creative without having the gear. The gear is a good tool, but it should never be the instigator for creativity.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Tell us a little
bit. Now that it's a career, it's kind of like, I love it.
Mega geared up. Talking about telling untold stories, for most people that are looking at that picture and some of the stories perhaps that you could share, the untold stories, why you've gone out to the red dust so much and you're continually drawn back out there. I almost feel like you could live out there with Wheeler and do most of your work. What's happening with these? Give us a little bit of context of the photo too, and explain a little bit about some of the work you've done out in the desert.
Yeah, so this is incredibly special sort of moment. So the two women in this is Yalti and Yakulti, who were part of in the 90s. There were the Pinnabee Nine, who were the last, Indigenous mob to walk out of the desert and come into contact with with the settlers. So
wow.
And the two older women sort of center next to either side of the girl in the purple top.
Yep.
They're also Yalti, I think, is one of Australia's most prolific artists. So just last week, Beyonce was standing in front of one of her paintings, and Steve Martin owns them, and they were part of this of the last 9 people to sort of leave the old ways out near Kirakara. So it's about 8-9 hours west of Alice, just over the border in WA. And I was very fortunate enough to go out to be invited with their family to go out to back to their country for a week of camping and to document storylines, song, hunting areas, and just documenting the experience, because a very important and tragic part of what is happening out in remote communities now is that there is a lot of there's a loss of knowledge and culture because age and a range of different stories, which we can talk about another time. But so we spent a week out there. That's a 100-kilometer salt lake in the middle of the Red Desert. And incredible. So we were just camping along the side of that, and it felt like we were at the beach. And then at the same time as that, again, very sort of nuanced story, which we probably don't have the time to do it justice. But what we were also documenting was a handback of cultural items from Melbourne University. So between 1910 and 1960, Melbourne Uni, through a anthropologist, he actually went all along the top end and down Central Australia and amassed the largest collection of artifacts in the world, but kept them under lock and key at Melbourne Uni. And these are things from sacred items to photos, books, stories, written language, huge amounts of culture. And there has been a big disconnect between those communities and all of those items. So it's only in the last few years where Jessie, which is the cousin of Yalti and the niece, her mum was in Samson and Delilah.
The movie.
Warwick Thornton.
Yeah.
Yep. So this all kicked off when her grandmother was in that film in front of a photo of her in Alice Springs, and that ended up making its way into the film. And then the owners of that photograph sued, or I don't know if they sued, but they prevented that shot being in the film and had to be paid out large amounts of a large sum of money, because they were the copyright owners of that film, of her mum being in front of a photo of herself.
Wow.
So they're like, this isn't on. Like, how can somebody own our images, like of us, of our culture, of our history, of really important people? So it started this huge, and it's still going at the moment, but Jessie and her family have started this fight to get that released and returned to country. And it's gone through the big courts, and it's in the process of doing so now. And so we had a bunch of crew from Melbourne Uni who are amazing as well. They're trying to do the right thing now, but going across the top end and down Central Desert to communicate with community and show them what they've got and start the process of how can we hand this back and give ownership back, but in a way which is responsible, because a lot of this stuff is delicate and might need to be, in the protection of a museum. And so what does that look like? The biggest tragedy of that, though, is this family. Melbourne Uni own all of the artifacts. This family of the anthropologist owns the photos, and they're like, in my opinion, and this is just me, they're everything that is wrong with Australia, because they refuse to even have conversations with them. So we were out there showing elders photos of them young, their parents, their grandparents, their aunties and uncles, and they're like, oh my God, like this is this. And you could see on their face, it was an incredibly emotional sort of experience. And they're like, can we keep these? And they had to be like, no, you can't make copies of these. We have to take these back now. And
as a photographer, where do you stand with that? What clause could be, what would you write up to go, if this is of, would you say something like, if this is of cultural significance or gain by changing hands of ownership, we must do it? Like what?
100%. I think the key though is access to the photography. So that's a discussion I've had internally for years. It's like, I do it myself. I go out into community, take photos, have this huge library of stuff. Then I send them links and whatever, but that doesn't get to the end person.
Yeah.
And the person who wants it most, and the person who it's probably the most meaningful for. And it's like, it's just a access to information problem. So how do we solve this? And I'm, trying to work with a few different people at the moment to tackle that, but it's a big issue. And I don't know how exactly, but from a legal perspective, this is a kind of a different story because, well, for me, it's kind of like if somebody wants that photo, take it. If you're in it, it's your photo as much as it is mine.
Right. But that doesn't always float in the photography world.
Well, no, and probably rightfully so from outside of maybe sensitive areas, because, if you hire a model for a conceptual idea, and if we're talking more, studio-based stuff or whatever, that model doesn't have the right to that. They're just an element of a photo that you're creating. So they shouldn't, if that photo was to blow up and get famous and be worth millions and millions of dollars, the model can't then go, well, this is my photo. It's a different story if you're documenting history and culture, though. I think this is why it's a bit grey, because it's not defined. Like, when does a photo become a piece of art, and when does it become a piece of history? And where is those lines? And the positive is that the laws currently are protecting the photographer, so the person who and the creatives, which almost never happens. The creatives are always at the bottom and getting taken advantage of. So that's why these laws sort of exist.
Especially because you put stuff online as well, and people just rip it. Hey, like that's the jailgate, isn't it? It's like, well, you put it online, so people can rip it. But I guess where does it get out of hand? Is it if people profit off it?
Yeah.
And start using it for their marketing campaign for a soft drink company. You're like, whoa. That's probably obviously a bit less grey, but I'm sure it happens in more subtle ways than that, and you don't know about it.
Oh yeah, all the time. Like Instagram is rife of it. But
I want to play a video. I know this is probably awkward in front of you, and I've cringed about knowing that you're going to hate this. But also you're a videographer as well, and I just want to play a little clip that you did with Intrepid because I know, whatever. It's a really cool clip, and I just think it's really creative, and everyone here wants to travel. So for those of the people that want to travel and dream, please watch this next clip, and we're going to come back with a little bit more creative insight as to Benny Mac, and he directed, and he can talk a little bit about this. Plus, any photographers out there, ask your questions right now. Everyone would love to speak to someone like Benny and get a couple of tips about photography, and he's the best person to talk to. Watch your screens right now. This is a really cool clip that makes me want to travel so badly.
When was the last time that you looked up in wonder? Looked into the eyes of a complete stranger and didn't look down? Replace what you thought you knew with the truth about places, about people, about differences. Took yourself so far from the world that you know. You gave yourself no choice but to be challenged, to be fearless, to be open and curious, and to be kind. Right now, more than ever, this world needs more intrepid people.
Get me on a plane. Get me on a plane. Do you miss traveling? Is that?
Oh, dude.
Oh,
Unbelievably.
it's those stories, isn't it? You would see. So it's those stories of getting out of your. I mean, you do some beautiful work on country here. And someone asked if you're Indigenous, and I know for a fact Benny isn't. But you could believe that you would be, because you represent Indigenous people. That's probably wrong to say that. Whatever. You do allyship as good as anyone, and I've spent significant time with Benny in that space, so I can account for that. But let's talk about travelling. Oh man, that gig's unreal. What are some of your experiences? What do you love about travelling? And you've been able to get up top of mountains. I remember last time I spoke to you, you followed someone that... Hang on. Had no legs? Hang on. I know that I'm wrong, but I have to trigger the conversation so I can be corrected. You followed someone that couldn't climb up a mountain or something. Tell us.
So that you're talking about Dan Berlin, who was a blind athlete.
Oh, blind.
And we did 2 ultra marathons through New Zealand in 4 days. So we did the Tongariro trek, which is Lord of the Rings, Mordor, the volcano. Normally a 4-day trek. We did that in 16 hours. And then 4 days later, we backed that up with doing the Milford Sound in 19 hours. So I think the first one was about 55K and the second one was about 60 something.
This is crazy. This is crazy. How many videographers are ticking the box of can run ultra distances and marathons, plus also be like, you pretty much got the gig when you heard that brief. I'm the one.
There's not too many. There's only one other I know who I'll give a shout out to, which is Lucy Piper, and she had done the job before me. She's also the writer of the Be Intrepid piece.
Cool.
She was a co-director on that. So a hero of mine. But
cool. Sorry, mate.
Incredible sort of experience, because at first when I heard about that job, it was like, okay, cool. So maybe we'll be able to meet them up at different points along the way, and if there's budget, we'll get a helicopter up or whatever. And then as it sort of came unknown, it was like, no, you've just got to run it. And I was like, okay. Then being a travel photographer, pre-COVID, I was away normally 7 to 8 months of the year. So in and out of countries nonstop. So my training was, I try and keep a very high level of fitness, but not ultra marathon style. And my niche is definitely mountains and treks, but this was like a next level. But dude, I was like nervous for like months before that.
About what? About not making it?
About not doing the job. Like not being able to do it. And it almost happened, because at about 20 Ks before the end of the first trek, like I twisted my knee I was in like 9 out of 10 pain for every step for the rest of the way. And luckily for me, unluckily for the rest of the crew. So the way it works is Dan is blind, and then he has a lead person. So he has the 2 sticks, and then giving him feedback. And then he's got somebody behind him to catch. And then there's a third person, and those 3 guides are trading position. So for every single step, they're calling it out. And as you can imagine, anyone who's done technical climbing, you've got boulders and rocks everywhere. It's not like you're running the tan. It's like his ankles are incredible. He's an X-Man, like his ankles are rolling constantly, but he's always moving forward.
Wow.
So the person at the front is like yelling, going, yeah, we've got a boulder on the left, we've got a stick on our right, check this, blah, 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 blah. And that non-stop for, 16 hours is bloody exhausting, Oof. Not only for the caller, but for him. And then for the last, 10Ks, we made amazing pace for that first one, but then we got stuck in mud trenches. So it was raining and we're probably 10-foot mud, literally mud trenches that we're trying to get down to. And we're at that stage, I think we were down to like a K an hour. The last 10Ks was the hardest, most extreme part. But fortunately for me, that's when my leg hurt the most. So I had lost a lot of pace.
Where do you?
It didn't really matter.
Shut up, mate. You're like 8th down the line of the. You're not. You're the 8th down the line who can touch the first aid kit. We've got to ask all the other 7 people if they're hurt more. You're last. Excuse me, photographer guy here. But did you film? There was a film. Was that a video? Did you video that or film? Sorry, photo.
Yeah, there's a film in that. We did photo and video, so you can check that out on the website as well. It's like a 7-minute. Shout out to them as well. We were supposed to be in Scotland doing Loch Ness last year, so we were going to do an 80K trek, but COVID happened, and at the moment I think they just completed a 190-mile trek through Washington over 3 days. So those guys, and Dan is one of the most inspirational people I've ever met. Turned blind when he was in his early 20s.
Right.
And that's when he got into these to show young kids that you're more than your disability.
Yes.
And your boundaries are what you're setting for yourself. Don't listen to when you see him talk in schools. It's kind of like for a blind kid or maybe kid with extra learning disabilities. It's like, well, as long as you get through school, you've done well. And it's like, nah, bro. Like set your bar where you want to be, and you can do it. So
we get comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's a great reminder. Someone's asked this, and it's also something that we talked a little bit off air about. You said most of your life outlook revolves around community, helping others find a place in theirs. And someone's also asked, how do you approach making someone feel comfortable to share their story? I think they really go hand in hand. How do you make? And I've had the uncomfortable pleasure of sitting in front of a lens in freezing water in Port Arlington. It felt like winter, but you did make me feel very comfortable. What tactics do you use to get people comfortable in front of a lens?
Honestly, just be a good person. Just like connect with somebody, meet them on their level. And when you're taking photos or taking videos, this isn't any skit in life, but it's just very relevant for my skill set. But meet somebody on their level and just see them for who they are, and then try and invest in them, and they'll return. Like, this is all people want. It's so simple. Just like, have a chat, and just be a good person and be open, and don't try and project your, whatever's going on in your head. Let them talk to you. Don't try and, just be a listener, really. And then as soon as you start to listen to people, they open up and they become comfortable. And also respecting that, when you do put somebody on the spot, you are often making somebody feel uncomfortable. Be sensitive to that, be empathetic to that, and show some compassion to their discomfort.
And I think it's not saying it's easier, but certainly your work is about bringing out people's stories. So you've got I mean, you're in the right place to. You're not taking photos of someone on a studio advertising set going, look happy now and pretend that you're throwing a Lamington in the air and you love it and you love it, love the Lamington. It's like you're chosen. You've chosen to tell real stories. So you've got definitely you're coming from a good spot. You've started doing portraits, and we definitely won't be showing my one. But
it's on there though.
You took some incredible shots. This is what you've been doing a little bit more in lockdown, and I also wanted you to think ahead of a shit skill that you learned in COVID too while we're doing this, because we're going to finish with that. Tell us about this particular direction that you took with getting people that you kind of know or know about. You've known Brodie for a while from the Collingwood Football Club. I'm sure a lot of people have never seen Brodie in that light that you've taken now, and also Laura Thompson, who we had on here, founder of Clothing The Gap. What led you to do this particular series of portraits?
Man, lockdown was just killing my vibe. Like for all years, I've just been so used to. I've just been lucky. Had amazing jobs, worked in jobs which were just good creatively, but were good for the soul. So working with charities and organisations which ticked all of the boxes, and then that just came to a very quick stop last year. And you go through this low to do that, because it's like, that was me, that was my sense of self. And then it just got to a stage where I'm like, I'm not shooting, I'm not telling these stories, I'm not, like, I have to find it. So it just was a case of get in touch with people I want to shoot, start making the work that I want to be proud of again. And when everyone who I sort of approach to say, yes, can I take a photo of you? There's nothing
yeah.
I want to do except just listen to your story and try and tell it in a frame. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the practice is important. So it's as simple as that. That's what instigated these photos, and there is no purpose other than just to sit there right now and be pretty images and hopefully instigate a bit of a interest into who these people are and what they're about, and convey a bit of their personality deeper than what you might see.
I just got another tingle, mate, like down my back. It's happened. I spot on. It's spot on. You're creating, you're inviting us to learn something different about these people. I know these two people, one personally, one not, but I know who Brodie is. And to look at him that way and then go see him jump on a football field, it helps. It does. It helps. It's spot on. You do such a good job. And Laura, what a fierce, compassionate warrior woman, matriarch that person is. Look at
absolute legend. And then that her photo in particular was a unique one, because Laura has the biggest smile, and she's always smiling. Yeah. And then sitting and having a chat with her just for half an hour, like, I was surprised that she said yes, because she had no idea who I was. I came into their shop, and we just sort of sat, had a chat for a half hour, and that's the obvious thing to shoot, her smile, because that's her weapon in a way. But then knowing her history, like, she's a battler, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
massively.
She's tough, and she does it in a beautiful way. Like, her thing was kill him with kindness.
Totally.
But I wanted to, her smile is out there so much. Like, how do we tell this part of the story? And then when that sort of frame popped up, I'm like, that's it. Like, that's, for me, that's her more than.
What was her response?
At first, I don't think she liked it. She's a bit like,
bit angry.
You sure? Yeah. And then after a week, she's like, she came around to it, and I think it was also showing it to other people, and they're like, that's a really powerful photo. And that's what it was. It's power in that photo.
It was so funny watching you muck around with. It made the news. It was so funny. It made the news, but I think it was the first lockdown. You decided to like everyone else, start documenting weird things online, and probably a lot of us pretty cringe about it. But you really had a lot of fun with it, and you taught yourself a new skill every day. Is that what it is? And
Yeah.
it did not make shit skills. Shit skills. Tell us some of this. I can't find any media. I don't know where to find it. It's
it's all on the Insta.
Oh, it's on the Insta. Tell us about some of these. Give us a summary of some of the skills that you learned. Did you just make these up, or did you go? Is there a website that you go? Crap skills, shit things to learn today.
Well, mostly I was just. It started because we had a lot of time down, and I was like, how does Morse code work? Like, I know about Morse code, but what is it? And so then I was like, I've got time. How does Morse code work? So I sort of learnt the basics of Morse code within a few hours. And then I was like, this is a start of COVID as well. You know, when there was no like JobKeeper, stress was crazy. And I was like, for that 2 hours that I was learning that, I forgot about life for a minute. And it's the power of learning and just using your brain to stay occupied is so good for everything. We could go into mental health with that, but we'll keep it light. Cool. And so the next day I'm like, I'll just do another one. You know, I'll just spend 2 hours a day just breaking up my dull routine of reading the news and learn something else. And then it sort of just snowballed. So I just sort of start exploring everywhere, and then people would send in recommendations, and sort of went here and the other, and then people would send me messages and be like, I'm just really looking forward to seeing what you come up with today.
Here's one.
And then I'm an idiot. It just took a life of its own. Yeah.
What's with the, you got the pantomime face like you're like Charlie Chaplin. You turned into like Charlie Chaplin or something. Like, whoa. Did you... get out. But you knew that, come on. Come on, I know you're a basketballer. I want the hard stuff. What's this?
This one was the shittest one, but this was the hardest one, for sure. You know how people spin pens? This was so tough on your fingers. I gave up.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Either way, the end thing is the process of learning it. This one was pretty...
this one's hilarious. This is you climbing around a table. This is something, if you're still at home in COVID.
Kids will love this.
Yeah, kids, I want videos sent in about this. You got to climb around a table at home. Henry, Eddie, I know you're in lockdown. Give us the finish. Ta-da! You're so good. Hey, Benny, we've just chewed through 40 minutes of chats. It's so good, minus a little tech glitch, but we'll fix that up. Someone also said, I feel that an experience with Benny could be quite healing for the mind, and Paulie Sav would know what it's like, one of the other listeners, hanging out with you. It truly is quite healing and peaceful, and it's a gift that you've got. I'm so glad that you're spending lots of time out in community, and I'm sure you're learning a lot about their calmness and way of life and stuff, and I hope you get out there soon. But keep doing what you're doing, and I really appreciate you jumping in for a chat, my man.
No, thanks for having me, bro. It's been great.
Sorry to make you look at yourself a few more times than probably what you wanted. I guess, and also thanks for doing the photos. If everyone's seen the photos for my wedding, they're absolutely splendid. I'm not sure Benny really didn't want to do those photos, FYI. He doesn't do wedding portraits. As you can see, he's a lot more gifted than doing wedding portraits and stuff. But it was an absolute honour to have you part of the wedding. And check out Benny Mac website. What are you working on at the moment?
What am I working on at the moment? Well, I was sort of waiting for things to kick off. We're about to launch a a project with St. Vincent's Hospital, working with
Cool.
Indigenous. It's for the Indigenous community, looking at kidney transplants. So tackling the issues with that. So that should be out in the next couple of weeks, actually. So yeah, it's exciting.
I did ask. I did say you're going to give us a few photo tips, and I wouldn't mind one. Give us go on. What's going on out there for photographers? Say you've got a $500 budget.
Yeah, phone. Just get a good iPhone. And then
Wow. Really?
100%. Yeah. Don't worry about lenses. Don't worry about. First thing you should be looking at is how to look at what is happening with the light and how to capture that. So
any free programs out there?
Don't worry about free programs. Just if you've got an iPhone or Samsung, whatever.
Yep.
You know how if you click on, you can control the exposure.
I'm doing it. Yep. I'm gonna do it.
Bring that down.
Bring the exposure down.
Bring that exposure down so that the point that you want to be focused on is exposed correctly, and everything else works towards that.
Now, is exposure ISO?
Exposure is a combination of ISO.
Okay. Bring it all down.
Yeah, and well, bring it down according to what it is you want to shoot. But if you find a really beautiful bit of light hitting your house or anywhere, you're looking for those moments which light is doing something interesting. Like right now, this is awful light on me, but yours is quite nice. So you'd be trying to expose to the left side of your face, right? While if you bring up that iPhone, it's going to try and expose to the middle and try and get everything in within the dynamic range. But
do you muck around with white balance, WB?
Nah, don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about anything technical. Just be looking for composition and interesting light.
So ISO, aperture.
Aperture. Well, yeah, aperture is a big factor. But before you worry about any of them, still it depends about the story you're telling within the frame.
Yep.
So you can have the best or the worst camera. You've got to think about what is the narrative that image you're trying to convey. Now, you could say that many different ways, but if you're not saying anything, it doesn't matter how good the camera is. It's a useless photo. Like, think about the story, and then as you get better at telling the story of the image, you'll pick up the technical side, but go storytelling first, technical second.
Wow, people are loving this. People are loving this on the chat.
Yeah, technical should never come first, because then this is just what happens with YouTube. Like YouTube and Instagram, it's just like people reviewing stuff that they never know how to create something good from. It's like, keep it simple. What is it you're saying? And then learn how to do the technical stuff after. But first and foremost, story first, and look at light. So work with natural light. Hey, yep.
Don't go into a dark spot and try and pull everything up. Like, because I remember when we did that little photo shoot that we did, it was like you had this window of light that you had to honor, and outside of that, you're like, I don't want to touch it. And it was like by minutes, like that sun was going down. So that's really interesting.
So I will give one really good practical tip.
Yeah, go. Because there's people talking about they've got phones. People are going, Samsung, give me Samsung, please. iPhones.
Turn off your down lights. So any natural lights, they're really ugly in your TV, in your room. Turn off your lights. Open up a window.
Side light.
Face towards a window, you'll get a nice big soft source of light. That's a beautiful thing. What kills a lot of photos is you've got these ugly sort of like triangles of yellow light coming, which gives you bad shadows here. It's all over the place. You want a nice, soft, even exposure. and then the opposite to that. So I've got a big window here. This will be a nice shot. If I go this way and try and get a photo, this is all going to be dark, and that's going to be overexposed, right? So you want to use nice big soft sources mostly. Get rid of unnatural light as much as you can. So whenever I go into a set, turn off all of the lights and then build up from there instead of trying to compete with them.
When after we did that photo shoot, I noticed this big boy light that you brought out, and it had this piece of paper or white something to what do you call that?
Diffuse
the light. So I'm adding to the home job thing here. This changed the light from my. That's a bit of paper. I know the screen. I put a bit of paper over my lamp. And I used to have a lamp, and if you look at my old videos that I had, my early streams, that little white bit of paper over a lamp has changed the lighting on my stream immediately. I felt like I was in a studio.
Yeah.
A piece of paper over a lamp.
Light.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what's happening is that light is, think of it as a line, and then you're trying to turn it into multiple softer lines, which gives us nice shape on the face.
Yep.
If you've got a torch, you're going to have a bit of light here or whatever. It's very directional and it's ugly. What you want is that nice, even, you'd call it a drop off. So from where it is most exposed to the least, it's going from, 90 to 80 to 70%, 60, blah, blah, blah. While something like an extreme example is a spotlight is going from like 100% to 0% in a very, very small space. So yeah, adding diffusion or using a big soft light source, which is why windows are the best, is you're getting that exposure drop off.
Full coverage kind of thing. It's
gradually. Yeah.
Wow. People are actually going nuts on the chat. I knew I should have started this whole Q&A with our basic photographer mind a lot earlier, but I really wanted to tell your story. If you want to, maybe we'll have you back on in a couple of weeks or something, and people can send in their photos, and maybe you can critique them and judge them and go, oof, that one's
for sure. Happy to help.
That's definitely an iPhone. It's definitely an iPhone, that one.
Yeah.
Like people are saying I've taken 20 photos in the last 2 minutes right now. This is great. Alan Lardu, how do you photograph someone with a head for radio asking for a friend? I'm sure you're a professional at that, Alan. You selfie master. Benny, thanks, mate. Where to go? You're a ledge.
No worries, bros.
See you on Twitch.
Thanks for having me.
See you on Twitch in a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you then.
Thanks,
Bye.
mate. See ya.